Have you ever been walking down a path you're familiar with and you stumble? Well, that's what's happening to the Israelites here in Romans 9 towards the end. They've been following God and they were God's chosen people. And Romans 9 covers that. But it's also covering how the Gentiles are now being brought in and being brought into the family because of their faith. Yet the Israelites, because they have chosen to make the law so important, are not necessarily being brought in the same way. It says here, but the people of Israel who tried so hard to get right with God by keeping the law never succeeded. Why not? Because they were trying to get right by keeping his law instead of trusting him. They stumbled over the great rock in their path. And how often do we do that today? Instead of trusting God with the things in our life, we let other things trip us up. Society, social media, busyness, family, friends, and we take all of that and we place it in front of that trust we should be putting into God. And we allow that to stumble us and to make it more difficult because we think we have to do this or we have to do that in order to be right with God. We fall back into those patterns that the Israelites had, where the law was everything and they weren't taking the time to actually trust in God. Better yet, their great stumbling block was Jesus. They couldn't trust in Jesus because they didn't believe he was the Messiah. They thought he was just another prophet or a heresy at sometimes, as we read through the Bible. Yet the Gentiles took Jesus for who he was and who he said he was, and they were able to just trust him. And because of that, they were made right. And the Israelites, God's chosen people, were the ones that were kind of being shunned and pushed aside and, being left out because they were stumbling over the law. Jesus came to fulfill that law, and because we would never live up to it. And they were so intent on living up to that they lose sight of who he was and what he was here to do. What are your stumbling blocks? What trips you up? What takes your trust away from God? What takes, your eyes off of him and not realizing what he's done for you by going to that cross? And that's what I would ask you this week. Think about that. What trips you up? What keeps you separated from God because you feel you have to do something to prove that you're worthy of his love? Thank you for joining us on this week's Wednesday Wisdom, and we'll catch you next week.